It's Sunday evening. Your ideal client is on the sofa, phone in hand. They've opened your latest post, read it all the way through, and thought, that's exactly right. And then they've closed the platform without taking any action. That moment, the gap between recognition and action, is the single most expensive problem in your marketing right now. And here's what makes it so freaking difficult to fix. It's because your ideal client can't actually tell you why they closed the platform down or kept on scrolling. The decision to keep scrolling or log out happened before their conscious mind caught up with it. It's not a rational response to a logical case, it's an emotional response to a felt sense. The felt sense they didn't get from your content. And that's what we're building today. I know there's a specific kind of frustration that comes with operating at a serious level, especially when your content performs well and the right people are engaging and you get discovery calls that go to a proposal and then a qualified prospect, someone who spent time evaluating your work, who you put time into creating a proposal for. How freaking annoying it is when they go and they hire somebody else, and maybe even someone with less experience than you. And very often they don't give you an explanation, and sometimes they don't even reply to your follow ups. Super annoying. And here's what makes that so expensive for you and your business. It's not the fact that you've lost the deal, it's that you can't see what went wrong because you can't fix what's invisible, right? Now, I've been working inside scaling businesses for over 20 years, and that scenario almost always comes down to one thing. Your marketing caught their attention, which is a win in and of itself, but it didn't make them feel understood. And people buy from people who make them feel understood. And that happens before any sales conversation, before any proposal, before they've even decided to reach out to you. So before we go any further, I want to ask you something. When did you last open your ideal client document, your ICP, ICA document, whatever you call it, the one where you have a few pain points listed, their demographics, the who I work with best type thing? For most people at your level, that document lives in a folder that people haven't touched or looked at in the last 18 months, if not more. And here's the thing, that document, it describes your ideal client, who they are on paper, but it doesn't describe what it actually feels like to be them on a difficult work day during the week. And that gap, that's what this video is about. At the level you're currently operating at, already you've already cleared the credentials bar. So your ideal client isn't comparing qualified to unqualified. They're comparing 4 or 5 people who all look capable on paper, and they're eager to proceed with one of them. So what tips the decision? A feeling, a gut instinct that they feel in the first few seconds of reading your content, seeing your post, watching your video. It's like, does this person understand what my world is actually like from inside it? There's a neurologist called Antonio Damasio who studied patients who lost the ability to feel emotions due to brain injuries while keeping their full cognitive function. And they couldn't make decisions, a simple choice or a complex one, none. Without an emotional response, essentially every option that was presented to them felt equal. So his conclusion was emotion is how humans decide every single fucking time. So here's the practical implication. By the time someone does start to read your content, they're not consciously asking themselves, is this person qualified? They've already formed a view on that. What they're doing without realizing it is they're looking for a feeling, something that makes them feel something. A recognition of themselves in the stories you're telling, a sense of, does this person know what my day is actually like? And that feeling forms in seconds, split seconds, 1.5 seconds, in fact. And your marketing either creates that feeling for them or it doesn't. And the way to build it deliberately is to use psychographics. Now, here's what most people do when they sit down to understand their ideal client. They fill in some sort of a template. They add in their industry, their job title, revenue, a few pain points, and a few their goals. Ta-da! Done. And that information is helpful, but on its own, it's not enough. And I understand why. Like, it does feel thorough, It looks like a strategy, but what it produces is a description of a category of person. And you can't write content for a category. You can only write to human beings. So here's what works way better. Pick one real client, someone you know really well, and rather than filling in a template about them, walk through a day in their life in your head. What do they do first thing that morning? Like, what interrupted them by 10 a.m.? What were they feeling when they looked at their pipeline at noon? What were they reading at 9, 10 on their way to bed? Like, think through all of that stuff when when they were trying to do anything useful but couldn't fully switch off. Like, what was it that they were doing? That the original template tells you who they are, but the day in the life exercise tell you what it's like to actually be them. And those produce completely different results and outputs and allow you to create completely different content. So, for example, I could say my client struggles with inconsistent revenue. Sure, yes, that's a pain point and it's accurate for some of my clients. And it's what everyone else who's targeting my audience has also written. And here's the same insight after I've walked through a day in their life. On Sunday evenings, your client picks up their phone without meaning to and runs the numbers that they really already know. They look at their pipeline, the expected renewals, the proposals that they haven't heard back from that client for about 12 days now. Then they put the phone down, face down, because the thought creeps in that looking at it won't change anything. And they'd be better off focusing on getting their kids to bed because looking at it any longer is just going to annoy them, make them feel frustrated, and they don't want to take that out on the little one who hates to brush her teeth before going to bed. And that's a more imminent battle. Later, they go to bed themselves and lie there going through the next quarter. The two clients who are up for renewal, a team member who they probably know that they should let go, that they've been carrying them for longer than they know they should be. And underneath all of that, a thought that they've never said out loud. The business works, but only because I'm hustling so hard and I'm afraid to think about what would happen if I stopped. So that first version gets filed, yes, sure, but that second gets a screenshot and maybe even saved or forward to someone with, this is exactly it. So you see, both are talking to the same person who is their target audience. The only difference is depth of understanding. And the second one is more of a story. Speaking of stories, here's a quick one about Pixar, who in 2015 released Inside Out. The whole film takes place inside the mind of an 11-year-old girl who's going through a family move. This movie made $857 million. And yeah, sure, it was a kids' movie, but adults came, they sat down with their kids to watch it and found that their own emotional world was showing up on the screen because Pixar had understood the inside of their audience experience so precisely that the story felt personal to every single person watching it, adults included. So that's the brief here. Your ideal clients is inner world. That's what I'm talking about. That's the brief. And you don't find it by filling in a template. You find it by getting genuinely close to real people and paying careful attention to what you see and hear when you're close to them. So let's walk through an example of how you walk through the day in the life exercise. Start by thinking through, what does your ideal clients do first thing in the morning? And let's be honest here, most people, the first thing they do is they reach for their phone before they're even awake, right? The alarm goes off, you go and you reach for your phone. And then that reach is often a nervous system checking to see, did any fires crop up during the night? Maybe they've spoken before they've even maybe spoken to someone or, their loved one next to them in the bed, and their brain is already scanning. Is there a problem that needs handling before they can get proactive, before any of that proactive work is possible? Maybe they spot a missed payment from a client or a payment that bounced on their end or a difficult email, a team member pinging at 7 a.m. with something that needs a quick decision. The first 15 minutes of their day probably sets the emotional temperature for what the whole rest of the day is going to look like. I worked with a consultant who'd been posting on LinkedIn at 7 a.m. every day. Somebody told her that's when your audience is most active, which technically is true. But what she actually thought, when she actually thought through What our ideal clients were doing at 7 a.m., they weren't reading strategic posts. They were scanning for fires while being half awake, half stressed, and probably half getting dressed. Her content was cheerful and strategic, but completely wrong for that emotional state that her ideal clients were in. So she moved her posts to 1 p.m. and then engagement improved significantly. But more than that, the quality of the comments changed and people started replying because she was reaching them when they were actually receptive. The right content at the wrong emotional moment is invisible content. So, what I'm saying is run through what their morning routine is like before they even get to work. Then go on to the work day. So, for example, on their way to the office, they listen to the news to hear about what's happening in the world. And by the time they land at their desk, there's probably a dozen more emails in their inbox. Some is promotional stuff, promotion spam, and other shit, which they ignore. And others are emails from clients and team members. So, by mid morning, your ideal client is already up to their eyeballs, juggling 101 things all at once. A client situation getting complicated in a way that'll cost more time than it should, which they're frustrated about. Maybe a team member waiting on a decision, which is making them feel under pressure because only they can make the decision. And that proposal that's been out there for 12 days with no response, they're thinking, how can I follow up again without sounding desperate? And underneath all of that is that burden, that heavy feeling of being the sole person responsible for absolutely everything in the business. And, the strategy, the delivery, the commercial pipeline, the team, the clients, basically being the person who is holding everything together. Now, Donald Miller, in Building a Story Brand, separates the surface problem from the deeper one. So the surface problem is the difficult client, the quiet proposal, the slow month happening, all the team things, those kind of things going on. Whereas the deeper problem is the question living underneath all of that. Have I built something I'm actually proud of, or just something that functions because I haven't stepped away long enough to find out what would happen if I did? And that's the real villain in your client's story. And most marketing at this level never goes near it. So, when your content names that thing precisely, it causes your reader to start to trust you. And that's without looking at your website, reading a single credential, or anything else about you. And then when the working day is officially over, move on to the evening. So your client might have an hour after the dinner is cooked and the kids are gone to their rooms, the house is quiet, the TV is on, they're half paying attention and they're half in their own head. And what they're looking for in that hour, even if they wouldn't put it this way, is a voice that makes them feel less alone, because their role is structurally isolating. You can't always tell your team what's worrying you. You can't always be honest with clients about uncertainty, and maybe your spouse or loved one doesn't really get what it's like to be a business owner. And you hold a lot of that yourself, right? So this is a day in the life of an ideal client. Content that sits inside that evening moment, that asks for nothing. It doesn't sell anything. It just names something true about the day that this person has just had. And that's what gets forwarded. That's what gets screenshotted and sent to a peer with, read this. And that's what earns the right to that's what earns you the right to sell them something later. Because when someone has felt understood by you 20 times before they need you, the sales conversation is almost already done. So, quick question here. Which part of the day do you currently write for with real intention? And which part are you mostly guessing at? Let me know in the comments. So, let me put two pieces of content side by side so you can see the difference. So, imagine it's the same person speaking to a consultant and same audience, right, in both versions. So, here's version one. I help senior consultants build businesses that scale. My framework addresses positioning, offers, systems, and mindset. It's accurate, sure. Forgettable, completely. Could have come from anyone working in this space, right? Whereas version two sounds like, when you're carrying the strategy, delivery, sales, conversations, finance decisions, and the team simultaneously, Well, what catches serious operators off guard is that you've increased your tolerance to be able to hold it all together, but you haven't increased your capacity. So, what happens is you become busier, and the busier you become, the more invisible the ceiling becomes. You run straight into it before you've even seen it. So, version one, someone reads it and nods along, whereas version two, someone reads it and thinks, fuck, how did she know? So one version is written about the client, the other is written from inside their experience. And the commercial difference between those two is not subtle. I want to tell you about a consultant I worked with in the last few years. She was brilliant at what she did. She gets really great results in her business and for her clients. She's active on LinkedIn. But when she came to me, her pipeline conversion was really weak. She had proposals that would go out and then people would ghost her. She'd have a great discovery call, feel like this is like a dead cert. It's definitely going to go ahead. And then she'd lose the deal to someone who she knew was less experienced, and she would get so super pissed off. So we sat down and we did this exercise together. And what came up was uncomfortable. Her content was built entirely around her process, what she did, how she did it, why her approach was different. And yes, sure, all of it was accurate, but none of it was describing what it actually felt like to be her client before they hired her. Her ideal client was a company going through a leadership restructure. And when we actually walked through what that experience was, what surfaced was the fear of getting it wrong in front of the board. So for whoever the person was that was like hiring her, and that specific dread of a restructure that costs maybe 6 months of productivity and produces no visible change, the pressure of being the person who signed off on bringing in outside support, knowing that they'd be judged on whether it worked or not. That's what she started writing to. And her next three proposals all closed. And the clients who came in said some version of the same thing along the lines of, your content and your proposal made me feel like you'd done this specific thing before. And she had. Her marketing just hadn't found its way there yet before we'd started working together. Now, two things I see go wrong, even after people have done this work, is first, they're staying at pain points and treating them as the destination, whereas pain points only name the problem category. What you're building for is the felt experience of being inside that category on a specific day with specific live and active pressures. And the specificity is what creates recognition because your ideal clients can start to see themselves in your content. Categories produce agreement, whereas that specific felt experience, that produces trust. The second thing is doing this exercise once and then filing it away somewhere. Your ideal client's inner world shifts as their business shifts. The person at 100K revenue has a different set of fears to somebody at 500K revenue. The Sunday evening thought is different. The specific burdens are not all the same. So talk to your best current clients and listen. I mean, really listen to the exact words they use when they describe a hard day, a hard week, a hard month or quarter. That language is the work that needs doing and requires regular refreshing, especially with the volatility, ambiguity, and brain overload that people feel when crazy things are happening in the world around them. And oh my gosh, there's so much of that happening right now, right? So this is where I start with most clients in Millionize. Before we even touch positioning, before we rewrite any copy, before we look at conversion or LinkedIn or offers or any of the other stuff, we do this type of audit first because everything built after it is sharper when this foundation is right. And I've turned that process into a worksheet, the day in the life worksheet. It walks you through your ideal client's full day, section by section, from the moment they wake up through to the hour that they finally stop and nod off to sleep. From what they want to do down to how it feels to do it. So give it an hour with a specific person in mind. I love to do this and focus on who is my favorite client that I love to work with more than anyone else. And I probably shouldn't have favorites, but I have a few. And notice what shifts when you write that next, right? So you can download it from the link in the description below. Every client I've worked with who genuinely shifted their marketing did one thing first. They got serious, like really serious about understanding their ideal client's world from the inside. completely at the level of felt experience. And that commercial result shows up in the quality of people who reach out to you. They're more qualified, and you see it in the proposals that close too, and in the clients who arrive already knowing why they want to work with you specifically, because your marketing made them feel seen and understood, and they trust you before they've even had a conversation or said hello to you. Your client's inner monologue is the work you need to do. So go download the resource and get it done.